In 2018, a crew of 5 oceanographers set out on what should have been a routine 2-week voyage. Their goal was to test a new sonar mapping system off the coast of Iceland, somewhere over the Reykjanes Ridge where the Atlantic floor splits apart like an old scar, and to study deep water migration patterns in one of the quietest regions of the North Atlantic. They called it the Gray Belt, a dead zone for satellites where compasses drifted and signal vanished for miles. They called their ship the Argo. The Argo was captained by Dr. Elias Strand, a veteran researcher known for his calm precision, the kind of man who trusted data over feelings. With him were his assistant Marin, 2 technicians, and Daniel Rowe, a young sonar analyst fresh out of university. The first 3 days of their trip was fairly routine. Calm seas, clear readings, and generally an upbeat mood for all those on board. But less than 4 days after departing port, a strange signal started coming through the sonar, a repeating sound pattern buried deep beneath the ocean floor. Not only that, but the environment changed. The sky dulled, clouds stretched thin like ash, waves flattened into an unnatural calm, no birds, no wind. And just like that, their radios fell silent. Then the ship's instruments began to die one by one. GPS froze, compass spun, radio, pure static. Daniel spent hours at the console, twisting dials, scanning for frequencies. Finally, something flickered on the sonar, a chain of rhythmic pulse from deep beneath them. He waited. The sound came again. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. Perfectly timed. Marin, who was keeping watch with Daniel, also noticed this and leaned closer. Could it be another vessel? Out here? No one sails this far. Then, as Daniel tapped the microphone, the sonar repeated his pattern, an echo identical but delayed, almost like a reply. The crew launched their underwater drone to investigate. The ROV sank slowly through the darkness, its floodlight piercing the black. For minutes, nothing but drifting plankton. Then a flicker. Movement. A pale shimmer below, circling slowly. Marin whispered, "It's blinking back at us." The light disappeared, Mike, and then through the drone's microphone came a faint sound. Not mechanical, not marine. Footsteps. Slow, dragging, deliberate, like someone walking across a wet floor. Seconds later, the feed cut to static. When it returned, the drone was deeper than it should have been, resting beside something metallic on the seafloor. Letters on the hull, half buried in sand. Argo. That night, the crew could barely sleep. The sea was too calm, the silence too complete. Marin swore she heard footsteps above her cabin. Daniel said he saw movement reflected on the sonar screen. A human silhouette pacing the deck, even though everyone was accounted for. Then, just before dawn, Elias stepped out onto the bridge. The ocean was perfectly still, no stars, no horizon. And then he saw it, a ripple forming beside the ship, slow and wide, like something massive moving beneath them. He rushed for his binoculars, hoping to get a better sight. For a moment, a pale face surfaced in the water, eyeless, mouth open, as if breathing them in. He stumbled back, heart pounding. But when he called the others, the sea was empty again. Only his reflection stared back. And for a heartbeat, it smiled. By day 5, madness crept in. Daniel refused to sleep near the sonar. He said the pulse was copying their voices now. Marin checked the logs and saw that the sonar had recorded faint murmurs, matching their conversations word for word, but none of them remembered speaking. At midnight, the power flickered. The entire ship went dark. Elias and Marin stumbled onto the deck with flashlights and saw wet footprints leading from the railing to the cabin door. Bare human prints. They followed the trail into the comms room. Inside, the console light blinked weakly, and the sonar repeated a new pattern, slow, ragged, like breathing. By the fifth day, the Argo was drifting in perfect stillness. No wind, no radio signal, no movement on the radar. Just a single endless sheet of gray water stretching in every direction. They tried everything: emergency frequencies, distress flares, even firing the flare gun into the clouds to mark their position. Nothing. It was as if the sky itself refused to answer. The world had gone mute. Elias stared at the compass. The needle spun aimlessly, refusing to choose north. Marin counted the food supplies again and again, whispering numbers to herself just to hear a voice. Daniel sat by the sonar, the only sound left on the ship. A slow, irregular pulse that had begun to feel alive. At first, the crew thought they were just going mad from isolation, but then the weather changed. It began with a low groan, a distant rumble beneath the waves, like the ocean drawing breath. The water darkened and fog rolled in from every direction, thick as smoke. Within minutes, the Argo was surrounded by a wall of clouds so dense it looked solid. Lightning flashed somewhere within it, but no thunder followed. Elias shouted orders. "Secure the deck!" "Hold course!" But the instruments went blind. Barometers flatlined. Wind gauges froze. And yet the waves began to rise, crashing violently against the hull. Marin looked up through the fog and saw nothing. No horizon, no stars, no color. Just shifting shapes in the mist. Too tall, too wrong, like silhouettes of something standing far out at sea. The storm raged for hours. Rain fell sideways, stinging like needles. The sound of the sea became unbearable, roaring and screaming all at once until it suddenly stopped. Silence again. Utter, perfect silence. They stepped onto the deck expecting wreckage, but the ocean was calm, flat as glass. No storm clouds, no wind. Every trace of the tempest had vanished. The sky above them was clear, and the stars burned cold and unfamiliar. Constellations they didn't recognize. Marin trembled. "That wasn't weather," she whispered. Daniel called them below. On the sonar screen, the signal had changed. No longer a pulse, but a voice. Warped, wet, whispering. They couldn't make out words at first, but the cadence was human. When Marin turned up the gain, the sound sharpened. It was Elias's voice, faint, distant, saying over and over, "Hold course, hold course, hold course." Elias stared at the machine, his own voice echoing back from the deep. "That's impossible," he muttered. "That's me." The lights flickered. The ship's power began to fail, one deck light at a time. Then came the footsteps, wet, deliberate, moving down the hall outside the sonar room. Marin gripped Daniel's arm. "There's no one else on this ship." The footsteps stopped just behind the door. For a long, unbearable second, they heard breathing, slow, deep, and not human. But when they looked through the portholes, there was nothing. Just the same endless expanse of black water. And beneath it, something vast moving slowly, a shape that followed the Argo wherever it drifted. By dawn on the sixth day, the Argo was drifting somewhere in the Norwegian Sea. Or so the coordinates said. But even that was uncertain. The crew hadn't slept. They were pale, shaking, and convinced that something beneath the waves was calling to them. The sonar had gone silent. The sky above was colorless, like the world had been drained of light. At 6:47 a.m., Captain Elias made the first Mayday call. "Mayday, Mayday, this is research vessel Argo. We've lost navigation, requesting immediate assistance. Coordinates unknown." The transmission cut out mid-sentence. They tried again. Then again, no response. Only their own voices echoing faintly back through the radio, delayed by several seconds. Marin thought it was feedback, but then her delayed voice began saying things she hadn't said. "It's here. Below us, don't look over the side." "It remembers." Elias ripped the cable from the wall. The signal didn't stop. For the next 22 minutes, the ship broadcasted constant static punctuated by bursts of distorted speech, desperate, panicked, fragmented sentences that no one would hear in time. 2 days later, a Norwegian cargo ship named Bergen Star reported seeing a small vessel drifting aimlessly across calm waters. No distress flares, no lights, no movement. They tried to hail it. No response. When the crew boarded, they found the Argo. Everything was still powered on. Coffee cups half full, papers scattered, chairs overturned. No signs of violence, no signs of anyone. The ship's log showed dozens of distress calls, none of which had ever reached the Coast Guard. Then they found the recording, a final transmission saved automatically in the radio's emergency memory bank. The voice was Elias's, low, trembling. "It's below the hull, following us. We can't. It's not water. It's eyes. It's eyes everywhere." Then a screech, metal bending, men shouting. And finally, a sound like deep, rhythmic breathing echoing through miles of water. The last words almost inaudible. "Do you hear it too?" The Argo was towed back to port under military order. Every recording, every data log was classified. The ship itself disappeared soon after. Some say the Navy scrapped it. Others claim it's still out there, anchored in a remote bay, instruments still humming, transmitting that same looping signal into the dark. Hold course. Hold course. Hold course.